Yeah, I've seen them.
All right, good evening, everybody. We're gonna kick this off. All right, sorry we missed everybody last month due to weather. That's how it goes. But I'm glad to see everybody this month. We're going to get right into this. I don't think we have any guests tonight, do we? Looks like all familiar faces tonight. So, no guest. Treasurer's report.
All right. First things first. Did everybody get a ticket for tonight's drawing?
Yes.
Okay. Treasurer's report. I didn't have a balance yet in the bank, but right now money's going in and out left and right. We got about 5,300 in the bank, and we were expecting to pay 1,400 to 1,800 for the workshop. So we're in great shape, and right now there's about 34 people signed up for the workshop. So I think we're in good shape.
More than's in this room.
Thank you. And then what you mentioned with the giveaway, it's this tool here. Paul donated this to the club to give away. So we went ahead and handed those tickets out and see who the lucky winner is here. We'll do that at the end of the meeting. That way if anybody else shows up, they well, practically new. Yes.
How many members do we have paid?
I didn't count that up.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Not that many. I'll tell you before the end of the night.
Yeah, if you don't have a chance to pay tonight, please make sure you're there on Saturday because we're gonna buy you food and all that, and you can pay then. So, but we'll get into that. I don't think we have any old business to go over because we didn't have a meeting last month. So under new business, the tool giveaway was already mentioned. We had talked about getting our bylaws straight because our bylaws don't mention a lot of the things we do. And there are several people that emailed me. I reserved this room for March 23rd at 6 p.m. I'll send an email out to those who have emailed me interested in helping with that project. And if anybody else is interested in helping get our bylaws to reflect how we do business, then please email me and I'll send all the details, including our old bylaws and everything else. Basically, we'll be getting together, getting them written down, layman's terms, so anybody can understand it from A to Z, how we do things here in the club. And then we will email those out to all members so everybody has a chance to look at that, and then we'll come together at a meeting to either have other suggestions for change or to vote on those, to bring those in. It'll be a complete revision of our bylaws and not just an addition. There are several things we voted on in the last couple of years that need to be inserted into our bylaws. So a lot of things. If you have any ideas or there's some direction you'd like to see things go a different way, this is kind of your opportunity to help make those changes and kind of help see what you think this place should be going forward. So the 23rd at 6 p.m. and if you email me and say, hey, I want to be a part of this, then I'll shoot back everything to you. And then the last I put under new business, because it hasn't happened yet, is Mark Adams this Saturday, Friday and Saturday. Friday for club members, Saturday for everybody, for the few other people that aren't. Go ahead, Bob.
I'm really excited. We got 34 people committed to coming, so that's amazing. Mark Adams is coming for 2 presentations. The first one will be Friday night at 6:30. It'll be at the Hilton Garden Inn, and there'll be signage showing you where the room is. I think it's called the pre-function meeting room right off the lobby. It's for members only, and Mark's going to present to whoever comes. It's going to show his work that he does at the school, He's gonna discuss how he got into woodworking, and then he's gonna talk about where that path has led him. So he's an amazing instructor. He's an expert on marquetry, veneering, and joinery. And it's worth the time, I think, to listen to him on that. The big presentation is Saturday morning, and it's gonna start at 8 a.m. It's gonna be at Sangamon Reclaim. Probably go to maybe no later than 3. And then we ask that because of the number of people that are coming, if you can actually carpool, if you can. I think the parking, we worked on that. If you can kind of clarify where everybody can park at.
The Sangamon Reclaimed is the old Capital Reuse Center, or Metzger Flooring, for those who might remember. But there's a couple more buildings to the east, and the parking along the front of both our building and their buildings are available, as well as parking at Pomp's Tire. And then I think you've also made some arrangement over at Dollar General.
Yeah, you can park at the side lot at Dollar General. So, but please be careful crossing the street on Saturday. So, and then Mark will be presenting then hand cutting different kinds of joints. And he's an expert at it, so you'll be amazed by what you could do with that. We encourage carpooling. We do need a volunteer, if we could. We need somebody else to run another camera. What Mark does when he presents, because the joinery is kind of small, he'll have a table up front, and so everybody can see it. He'll have 2 cameras focusing on it, and then they'll feed into TV, so that way you can see what he's doing. Because we're gonna have 34 people, so we're gonna need a lot of room so people can see that. So somebody can volunteer to run a camera. In addition to you,
Yeah.
because we're gonna have 2 cameras, one on each side.
I got the other one.
That way you can see what's going on when he starts cutting, you know, with the chisels and the dovetail saw. So, and it's pretty simple.
Yeah, we got you covered.
Yeah. So, and then obviously lunch is provided.
You got plenty of chairs there, we need bigger room.
We're gonna have plenty of chairs. Yeah. Thanks for asking. So, any questions Friday or Saturday?
Thank you. And then the last new business is, so I don't forget at the end of the meeting, next month's meeting in April, Frank's got friends with the Type Bond representative and has reached out and had the representative for Type Bond will be here for next month's meeting. If anybody's been here to see that presentation before, you're not gonna wanna, it will be on YouTube, but you're gonna wanna be here for that. So definitely clear your calendar for April's meeting. You're not gonna wanna miss that.
And be thinking of any glue questions you
Yes.
have. So start noting them down. So
Right, any question, any new business, old business, anything?
April meeting?
It'd be the first
First
Monday in April, which is the 4th, yes.
When Type Bond's here, is there any possibility of leaving with, tables stuck to your head?
That,
if you really work on it, sure.
you know, that's, like Frank was saying, bring your questions. All right, if nobody has anything else, we'll go ahead and get started with the program. Norm's gonna start us off, and then, we'll go to Bob, who has brought some pieces in, and then, Terry has something he brought in, as well as slides, and then we'll come back and finish up with Norm for the last bit that he has.
I've heard that some of you have a problem thinking of ideas to present for the educational part of this program, but my problem was narrowing it down. I've got it narrowed down to about 6 different ideas, and I'm sure we can't cover them all tonight. I'm going to start with an introductory one that's a little bit off topic. My dad was the middle brother of a farm family, and the youngest brother, my uncle, took over the family farm, and they had a quarter-mile of Osage orange fencing on their property. And that'll come to light later on when we get into these mallets here. Here's an untreated one. and all these others have some kind of a treatment on them. On that farm, they also had walnut trees. And whenever we visited Grandpa, it was fun for us early teenagers to go out there and take clubs or sticks and try to knock the walnuts down. But that youngest uncle, he started gathering them up and running them through a saw. These are cross sections of a hard shell sliced like lunch meat. Now, I don't think he had a bandsaw at all. He used a cheap table saw, and he would shove a nut in the end of a radiator hose, and he'd slit it both ways, and it just kind of ripped the nut to protect his fingers. Then he had to, because it was probably a non-carbide saw blade, he had to do a lot of hand sanding. And I think it was just a sheet of paper on a flat surface. But after he retired, he would go to flea markets and whatnot out at Sun City, Del Webb's place by Phoenix, and he'd sell those things and other things. He did the same sort of thing with peach seeds, and he'd put them around a small jelly glass and glue them together on the edges, and then he would turn a small handle for a rattle bell, and the clinger was a acorn. He was not a good turner, but the handles on those things were quite good. This must have been one of his early attempts, but if you've ever done any wood turning, these segmented bowls like this can be a little tricky. And quite honestly, I'd give him about a C- on this one, even in a high school class. That same uncle became the president of the woodworking club out at Sun City. And he was always saying, dreaming up ideas for material for a project that other guys were throwing away. And this is a belt buckle from that endeavor. I'm sure you buy the brass somewhere, but this looks to me like it's Honduran mahogany. I'll probably forget when we get to the hammers, but my dad was the middle brother in that family, and he left the farm when he got married and had various jobs throughout life. He was never a woodworker. He ended up late in life being a machinist. And he gave me one or two of these brass rods, 1 inch in diameter, that was threaded for a 1/2 inch bolt. And I got the idea recently, because they're making these mallets, that I'd make one out of this. So I got an acorn nut for that thread and drilled a hole crossways to fit the 1 inch diameter of the brass, and did a little polishing, but I didn't go beyond 600 grit. I almost hate to use it because brass is so soft, but at least you probably won't get any metal shards flying around in your eyeballs or legs. When my dad retired in Rockford, he joined a woodworking club up there. I'll pass these around. There was a company in Rockford that made rather nice things. And once when I was visiting relatives there, I bought these 2 items. This happens to be our son, but this is a photo holder with an an angled base, and the joint, the dovetail joint is so tight, it amazes me how they could have that kind of tolerance. Maybe they did this with a metalworking lathe rather than woodworking tools. By the same token, this is nothing more than, I think, American walnut, and it's extra heavy. We should really say has a high density. And I'm sure there is lead weight inside of this, and it's merely a paperweight. The sanding is superb. They must have gone down beyond 600 grit on this, and I don't know what the finish is. It could have been just a plain old rub-on, or a Danish oil, but they were selling these. I don't remember the cost. Okay, you're curious about the bullseye here. I didn't know this was going to be part of the program until I saw this laying in a neighborhood yard, ready to go to the dumpster. So I grabbed a piece. Anybody want to guess what species it is, other than Ralph?
Locust?
It's a locust called honey locust. Typically it has large thorns, and some of them are multi-spurred thorns. But this tree didn't have a single one, because the big ones would be near the base. But I've identified it for sure through the bark and these seed pods. It's very dense. It almost takes two guys or one strong guy to lift that up. It's probably about 80 pounds. I drew some parallel lines on that. Ralph might have to help me here. But if he ran it through his sawmill and just took off slices like that, it would be an uneconomical way to saw it into slabs. Typically, Ralph would get rid of some narrow boards here, turn it 90 degrees, get rid of some more narrow boards, square it up, and then make a decision. But everybody knows that quarter sawn is the choice wood. And so where is the quarter sawn? In this case, it's just a few boards, mostly from here out to this edge. And the same thing over here, although it's less pronounced. So you end up with, in this case, some 4-inch boards that are quarter sawn because the growth rings are perpendicular to the saw blade edge. When you have anything close to a 90 degrees, that's quarter sawn, and with white oak and red oak especially, you get those flakes. You get the same thing with sycamore logs, and everybody pays or is willing to pay a premium price for boards like that. So there's better ways to get quarter sawn than this. You can take off the outer parts and do some here and some here, some here and some here. To get the most out of it, you would quarter the log this way and then start slicing this way. That's labor intensive with Ralph's machine. The highest percentage of quarter sawn is even more labor intensive than that. You basically cut pie-shaped wedges, and then when you square them up, you get a quarter sawn from every piece of narrow pie. But it's a lot of cutting to gain that much. When wood dries, and we're confident this is at least 30% moisture, Dustin and I looked it up on the computer, and it was, 48 pounds a cubic foot. And that's about the middle range for a hardwood. I thought it might be a little heavier than that, but it's probably 30% moisture, like I said. When this dries, you should probably cut it as soon as possible, because it's already starting to crack and it's only been cut about 3 days. Cut it soon and sticker it to dry out. And let's take this board right here. When that board dries, it's going to cup. And it's going to cup in the opposite direction of the growth rings. The growth rings are here, but it will cup this way. Quarter sawn doesn't do that. It behaves itself. So there's a few tricks like that that will benefit you when you're trying to figure out wood. The worst one is where the tree isn't balanced as it grows. Maybe it's one of those genetic imperfections where the tree twists a little bit. Or maybe the guy that runs the timber ground didn't cut off those lower branches so that you could have clean, knot-free area from the bottom part called the bole, B-O-L-E. So, here's another thing that involves woodworking construction. Let's say that you take this 4x4 and this 4x4. If you glue them back together to make an 8x8, these lines match up pretty good. But if you take this one and twist it 90 degrees and try to glue it together, then this shrinks at a different rate than this. This shrinkage here or here is called radial. No, that's backwards. Tangential, that's tangential shrinkage. And it shrinks more, partly because it tends to be where the sapwood is, but partly just because that's the nature of it. But the quarter sawn shrinks very, very little. So here's an example of what happens with that 4x4. Let's say I'm making a big lamp. I need an 8x8 for a big lamp. Well, if I take an 8x8 from here, it's going to shrink diagonally. It's going to shrink more this way than this way. So I get what, a trapezoid? The best thing to do is to try to match the grain up. And my very first project with a lathe was a table lamp. I built a nice walnut box, and I didn't have a big chunk of walnut. So I glued some flat boards together. Well, I was a rookie then. I didn't pay any attention to grain orientation. But as the years progressed, those slabs shrunk as they dried at a different rate. And when I rub my hand around the perimeter now, I can feel those ridges where one shrunk more than the other, even under polyurethane varnish. So, I think I'm running out of steam on that one. Augie, would you mind giving these out to this half of the room? there'll be extras because we don't have enough people here tonight. That's not Dennis.
Get three of them?
Did you get one, Dennis?
Nope, I will. And you want Norm here?
Anybody else need any?
I'm passing this out because when you make cutting boards, I need one, Augie. When you glue up this kind of cutting board, you have exotic wood, which tends to be oily species. Exotics are more dense and they have more oil. And oily wood does not glue very well to oily wood. So you have to start studying the solvents to make them stick together. So between this Padoc or Red Heart or whatever it is, and that white one, which is probably hard maple, you need to wipe down the red oily one. First you sand it fairly smooth. That kind of rough, no matter how fine the sandpaper is, that still roughs up the surface. And then you wipe it down with one of the potent solvents. The faster it dries, the better. But you put the solvent on it, in a few seconds you wipe it off, and you hope that the oil is soaked up in your rag. Then you want to quickly glue it, and it'll stick twice as good as if you skip those two steps entirely. Tight bond 2 and 3 are better than standard tight bond or yellow carpenter's glue. There are a few exotic ones, like the ones that's a mixture of powder and something else that's good on oily woods too. But just beware of oily woods and study that. There's so many applications of solvents. Raise your hand if you know what bar top epoxy is. That's probably less than half. But it's a thick pour. It's a mixture of two things. It's thick, and it costs $70 a gallon. And it's a bear to get everything right. Temperature and a perfectly level surface, etc., and it's messy. You better wear rubber gloves. Otherwise, it's like instant glue and you're gonna have to wear it off your skin. But a couple of those, like acetone and denatured alcohol, can be mixed with the bar top epoxy at perhaps 10%, and that will make it thinner and help it flow out, and you get better coverage. While we're on these boards, I'll pass some of them around, but here's one case where you might confront an ollie wood. But when you make this kind of cutting board, this is called end grain. What you take is a big rectangle of this, and if you want this board to be 1 1/8 inches thick, then you cut 1 1/8 inch strips here, and then you reverse half of them around. And if they're alternating strips, it ends up being like a checkerboard. If it's something like this narrow zone would be moved over here a little bit, and it would make a zigzag pattern right down through the middle. More like this. But you might say, what's the advantage of end grain? Well, the answer is, when you're cutting food on it, so here's the old-fashioned type. Flatboard, hard maple, oak. And when you, hello? And if you put whatever you're cutting on here, vegetables or meat, and you cut with the knife, it cuts crossways in the grain. But if you have a whole bunch of end grain like this, it doesn't cut the fibers, it separates the fibers. If you magnify this, look at it under a microscope, it looks like a whole bunch of table straws squeezed together. But if the knife starts to cut into that, and you pull the knife out, the two fibers that are like this try to squeeze back together. And you treat all of these with mineral oil. Mineral oil is basically baby oil without the pleasant odor. Mineral oil is quite expensive in a little bottle at the drugstore, like $3 for less than a pint. And it's higher now that I haven't bought any for a while. But my last batch was a gallon from eBay for $16. A gallon of mineral oil will go a long way. Now there's a fair amount of protection with mineral oil. But to make it even more protective, you mix about 10% of beeswax with it. You have to be careful because mineral oil is flammable. You want to use a double boiler. But if you get the temperature up to around 160 degrees, the beeswax will dissolve and it becomes thicker, almost like gravy. But it does a better job of impeding the soaking ability. It stays more on the surface. But regardless of what you do, how often you use this, you should never wash it in the dishwasher. You should never wash it in soapy water and submerge it. If you're going to use soapy water, just wipe it off and then rinse it. And dry it with a towel immediately. You don't want it soaking into the wood and messing things up. For instance, this one here is 3 boards. Who knows what kind of glue that is? Well, only the person that made it. And it might not be a waterproof glue. That one's hard maple. The other 2 were walnut or oak. I recently got the idea of making what are called trivets. Most women, they use hot pads. Put the hot pad under on the table to keep the varnish on the table from melting. Well, I heard of and several years ago talked to some people that drink too much wine or someplace that sells wine, and they saved some of the used corks for me. That's a lot cheaper than buying new corks. New corks can run anywhere from 30 to 50 cents a piece. So I thought of making a little perimeter and putting plywood underneath, and that's what these are. These are some kind of synthetic. I hope they handle the heat. but to make them extend further, I sliced them up like chunks of sausage. The tricky part here is getting the exact dimensions so that the corks fit in there solidly. Well, solidly, at least edge to edge. Then, here's a cheaper version of corks. Even if you get free corks, you've spent time and gas money to get it. It's not free, especially with gas at $4 or so a gallon. So I found these countertop or ceramic tiles, and they come in various shapes. And these are deliberately left loose in case you spill something on them. And you'd think that there would be quality control in manufacturing these. No, they tend to run a lot of different sizes. And it's real hard to sand a ceramic thing like this. Well, there's one way where that'll fit. You guys can figure it out. I have more stuff, but depending on how these other guys need time, I may not come back tonight.
That it?
Before I forget later, is there anybody that wants that log?
How much?
Okay, I don't have any pictures or anything, and both of these were made about 18 or 19 years ago. My daughter was in 4-H and wanted to learn how to do woodworking, and I was just starting out, so these are our second and third projects we ever made. So this is a nightstand that she still uses today, so I had to steal both of these from her. Because everything I make is either smaller or bigger. But it's a mission or craftsman style, depending on how you look at it. But it's for being I think this was our second project, and it's still together and still level and flat and everything. So I figured we did a pretty good job with it. It was put together with mortise and tenon, and that was a huge learning. And there's a lot of scrap pieces, obviously. So, but that's what that is. And she actually did do, other than the table saw, I made her use all the other tools, you know, and do everything. So she actually built these, so. And then this is a mirror that we actually still have hanging in our house because my wife hasn't let her take it yet. So I have to make my wife one, but she wants it out of cherry. So, and there's some things wrong with it, but like I said, she built these. You know, I mean, we were both learning together, but like if you look at the bottom here, it's probably about a 1/4 inch short. It hangs over just a little bit on that edge, and not on this. You know what I mean?
That's for the 1/4 inch width.
Yep, exactly. So, again, like I said, I don't have any pictures or anything, and my daughter gets most of the credit because it was her 4-H projects, but she actually got to take both of these to state and display them at state. So, but like I say, I typically make either things smaller on the CNC or I made some huge quilt cabinets from my mother-in-law and like display cases for my wife's photo albums and, you know, things like that. There ain't no way I'm trying to bring that in here, so. But these are all made out of white oak. I'm sorry, red oak, I'm sorry. And we tried to we bought everything at Lowe's, and, well, I yeah, probably Lowe's, and try to get the grain as straight as we can, but you can see there's many different grain directions and stuff in here, but I'm actually surprised it stayed together and not broke in 20 years, so. But I guess that's why we all do this, to build things that last, so.
Got really nice lines.
That's good.
Is that from a
Well, thank
plan,
you.
or did you, was that from a plan? or did
Yeah,
you just-
out of Wood Magazine. This was, that I think probably out of wood, but I don't remember, to be honest with you, so. And then obviously with any of those plans, you have to modify them.
Sure.
Because, you know, if you use their measurements exactly, it won't go together. I don't know who does it, but they're never quite exactly right, so. And I did later make 4 or 5 more of these because grandmas and aunts and stuff wanted them, you know, later, but, never quite as good as the first one. Oh, honestly, 2 of the other ones, when they put them in the house, the humidity was so different. They shrank and busted the mirror. Both of the mirrors had to be replaced. So, kind of a learning thing. It's like, okay, I gotta leave a little bit more gap between the mirror and the wood just to allow. Yeah, exactly. So, but, well, as far as those super balls and things like that, that's what I do on those, display cabinets with the glass fronts. Put little rubber balls in there and that absorbs, and the glass doesn't break if there's any expansion or contraction from that, so.
So was that wood wetter when you made it than it should have been, or?
I
was it
think,
just-
I think it was just humidity differences.
Okay.
But honestly too, I just had a garage, so backed the wife's car out, moved the tools around, made it and put it back in, so it could have been a part of that, but, whenever I tried to, and as Eric knows, anytime I tried to make my wife park outside for very long, I lost.
Which costs more, the glass or the wood?
The mirror, yeah, yeah. And I just checked on, I was gonna make hers with cherry. The mirror alone is like, the guy said probably about $150. Yeah. So,
Van Busker?
I didn't go out there. This is just a place.
Maybe it would cost that much.
Yeah, I don't
Sounds
know.
like a lot.
Well, and that's why I haven't made it yet, frankly,
All
so.
them up, they'll cut 2 pieces for, well, maybe 150.
Yeah.
Get some aluminum foil and just cover it.
Yeah, yeah, I won't get away with that very long.
Yeah, it's a frame rubber.
Just get a thrift store mirror and repurpose the glass.
Do what?
Thrift store and grab a mirror and repurpose the glass.
Yeah,
Cheap store.
never thought about that. So, okay, well, mine won't take, I knew mine wouldn't take very long, but, just wanted to show these, 'cause last year I didn't bring anything, so, and like I say, everything else that I bring is small or something, so. So, alrighty, well, thank you.
That's good.
All right. Reset here. We knock this around a little. Oh, actually, that's still.
Okay, and then what I'm gonna talk about is, the difference is pretty much when I bought the laser and when I bought my CNC. When I bought my laser, this is a Glowforge, Pro Plus laser. It came in a box when the only thing that I had to connect was the main cutter head. And that just clipped on with 1 wire and magnetic clipped in. It has basically 3 rubber bands with teeth, go here, here, and then one that goes this way underneath. And so, downloaded some free software and I was using it the same day. Now, now the CNC, next one. I thought I ordered or wanted a whole CNC. What I got was this. No base, no motor, no router, no controls, you know. So that was quite an interesting adventure. Okay, next one. So I ordered the base And so, this whole base here, it's amazing how heavy it is when you get it. You know, you just come down and it's got different, all these metal pieces, and getting everything all square, and plumb and level. It seems like every time I adjusted something, it threw something else off. And then we have these sections here are the riser sections, and this is a gantry. And with this particular model, you can see how thick and heavy that gantry is. And so this is actually a professional style, and it can handle a 7 horsepower motor on it. But okay, next one. Okay, and then this right here has 2 linear bearings on each side, at top and bottom. So there's 4 linear bearings that can hold a couple hundred pounds also. So, and then that's all has to be lubricated, and you can see how it has right here is the track for running, and then this track and this track are the bearings, so it can support everything. A problem I did when I hooked up the riser sections is that I didn't, I spent so much time trying to get the base stable. I thought once I had the base stable and level and plumb, that everything else from there on would be okay. And it wasn't. And so, next one. Okay, so then now, this one here is the Z component, and that is a screw. And it moves the whole thing up with this really big screw, kind of like a vise. And then these 2 motors here are the Y, and then there's a motor up here that's the X, back and forth. So there's 2 motors that control the whole thing back and forth. It's a Y, and then the other one's actually a slave to the Y. And then that track, there's a track here, a track across here, and then another track that comes up across the top there for controlling everything. And then these stepper motors, you can get the different stepper motors depending on the size of your machine. The laser, the stepper motors are like these really little tiny, like almost look like DC motors. And then, okay, next. Okay, so I have the 220 volt cutter head. Some people just have like their own router. You can see like DeWalt routers, 110 routers. And so this is the middle. This is a 220, basically a 4 horsepower router. You know, like I said, it can go up to the 7 horsepower, but that was like another $1,000. This controller here, it controls the emergency stops, it controls all the stepper motors. The main computer unit is in there. Okay, next. Okay, and you can see these cables here, and then you've got the limit switches. There was a problem with all these wires and stuff. One thing about building it yourself is that I had one of the limit switches, I had 2 of the limit switches reversed. And as soon as you turn it on, you know, you're like, you know, it was always catching itself. Whenever any of the limit switches would go off, it was off. But you could look at it and say, oh, okay. And then you knew exactly what wires to change. And then this box here, this is the variable frequency to the router, to the cutter head. And it's got a couple different things, and so that takes, you know, 220 and a 110 in order to control that. And so you have your emergency stops and your other controls. Okay, next. And this is my buddy Lakshman. He's pretending to be an electrician. Bob, did you know Lakshman from our building? Okay. Yeah, he's another IT guy like me, so. And, okay, go ahead. And then the next thing I had to buy that really surprised me, the spoil board, and the computer. And the computer had to have a network wire. And I couldn't believe I couldn't get a DVD drive for the software that I have and a network cable on a new computer. Seems like everything's Wi-Fi and you can't get a DVD drive or a Blu-ray. And yeah, so then I got here. Then the next thing you have to do with your spoil board, okay, next one, are all these bits. So the good bits are like $30. This one here is a flattening bit, and that's like $100 or so. And I tried to go cheap with this one here. It's a half inch round nose, and I've used it just a couple times, and it's already burning the wood now if I use it. So the difference, the bits, you have up cut, down cut, you know, the round nose, and then my favorites are these V-cut bits. I have 30, 60, 45. You have all the different collets that go to your different ones. I have 1/2 inch, 3/8, and 1/4 and 1/8. These little tiny bits are pretty neat. These are 1/8 inch bits, and 1/8 inch V bits for doing like really thin detailed objects. And then after a month, after getting everything in and trying to figure things, I had a problem with scale. My steps weren't right compared with the measurements on my drawings. And what it was that in the setup, you have to have it not only set up for your controller, but it seems like I have to have the right setup for the router itself. That really surprised me. I thought the router would be wherever you told it to go, and the router would just control speed and stuff. But just was enough just to throw your drawings off, just enough to bother you. You know, you have a part you wanted to be 4 feet, you find out it's, you know, a couple inches short of 4 feet. And then a month later, oh, does anybody have any question about these bits or anything? Because they're quite, they're way above my head. Because then you can deal with cutting speeds and feed rates and, you know, how much you can do and how deep you can go. There's like a whole science to doing these. With my laser, you have speed and power. That's it. You know, just those two controls. Oh, and thickness. You know where it's going to be focused, and you can just kind of mess with those two numbers until you get what you want. But this thing, you can go down a rabbit hole real quick. Okay. And then a month later, next picture, a disaster. But you can see it's like 2 inches underneath those two controllers. I have 3 sump pumps in my basement, and 2 of them stopped working. And so, yeah, so.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, but nothing was destroyed. It made a mess, and I had to clean it up. But
Wash the floor.
yeah, the floor. Yeah, actually, it was pretty good because all the sawdust and the stuff on the floor. Well, you know, when we were vacuuming it all up, it ended up being pretty good. The kids lost some stuff in the next room, is the kids' toy room, and of course, you know, had electronics on the floor and stuff that aren't supposed to be, and so we lost some of that. But none of my tools were hurt. Okay. this is, share it here.
What caused your sewer backup?
What?
What caused your sewer problem?
One was an electrical issue, the pump itself, basically died, and the other one had a float switch was jammed. Yeah. Yeah, so one that had the float switch that was down, I was able to fix that one. And then the other one, I had to replace the whole pump. Yeah, cause it popped the breaker. And I flipped the breaker back, but it just popped again. I let it dry out and I tried it again and it still popped, so I replaced it. Okay. Someone asked.
Down up there?
Yeah, I'm done with these. There's some other movies and stuff like that or videos, but that's fine. We're done.
Okay.
A couple months ago, a friend wanted me to make a sign, a big sign for his wife. One of those family signs had his name and stuff, and he wanted it out of cherry. And so I went to Ralph and I had this absolutely gorgeous cherry board. And when I bought that, he had this in like his junk pile. He's like, oh, here, I'll make a deal with you on that. And so this is what happens to your junk when you clean it up. And so a couple issues that on here is that my offset is off, if you look at it. What I wanted to do is I made the original offset a little high, and I thought I could adjust the letters to match it just by putting like a negative offset, making them bigger, but for some reason it just would not cooperate. No matter what numbers I put in, it always seemed to make them smaller. Positive, negative, it didn't matter, they just got smaller. And so it was kind of interesting about this is from their letterhead. They took it, they said, okay, I want a sign, this is my son, and he said, I just want something that's like my letterhead. And so I went to his website and downloaded the picture and then cleaned up the picture a little bit and was able to do this. I should have done it in multiple levels. I did it in using a 1/4 inch shank, 1/8 inch mill. And so this part here went fairly easy, but this here took hours and hours and hours to do. And my computer kept, after like an hour, it would stop and say, like, are you still there? Do you want me to continue? And so, so that was interesting. So far, that's the biggest project I've done. I've done lots of little ones. In fact, last weekend, it was kind of neat because my dog ate his leather dog tag. And so I made a little 1-inch metal dog tag out of this, made the little thing, and then went in the laser and put in his name and my phone number and stuff. So a little tiny thing, 1 inch by 1 inch. So the difference between these things. Okay, any questions about it? And we're gonna do a home visit. My laser at the moment thinks that the door is stuck open. So the laser's not working, but as soon as we can get that fixed, we plan on having a home visit for for people that want to come actually and play with these things. One thing that wasn't in the picture, that I hooked up my kid's PlayStation controller to the CNC. And that was because I kept running back and forth, wanting to be, right at the thing to zero it out, to set the axis at 0, and then running back, and you couldn't really see and be in 2 places at once. And that's just a third-party control. application that I did for that.
If you had to do it over, would you buy it?
The CNC or the laser?
The CNC?
Yeah, yeah, I really like it. I like, you know, cause what I started with, and then what I ended up with, this is, you know, it's, you know, people pay $30,000, $40,000 for this, for the CNC. And, you know, I started with like 4,000 for what I thought was the base model, which, you know, I thought the base model was, at least was usable. And then upgraded from there, but, yeah, it came in like 28 different boxes and put it all together, so. And, you know, a great learning experience, and, you know, like my laser, you know, it came in a box and it's ready. You know, it has a door open error, and I can't do anything about it. And the company's in California. You know, I know, but if something like that happened with the CNC, I know what sensors are on there and what all the sensors do. Like, you don't even run with your sensors, do you?
No, I've actually bought some to put on it. I never put them on there.
Yeah.
What size is that one? What's your cut
Oh,
cut
it's
area?
4x4 now. And I almost got my wife talked into letting me double it. And that's another thing about building it yourself. To double it will cost about $1,500, and it'll go from a 4x4 to a 4x8.
What projects do you think you'd have for something that big?
When I did those signs for the guy that died, and he wanted those big signs, you know, he actually wanted it. They actually originally wanted it to be 6 feet long. You know, but since I only have a 4x4, I talked to her about it, and it ended up working out a lot better, because because one of the boards was broken, and so I was able to cut it into 3x3 and get rid of the broken part of it. But yeah, if I can do the bigger boards, the bigger signs. I've seen some really nice benches. And then to be able to put in a bigger board to actually do the dedicated two benches, those look really neat. And a couple other science type things.
You mentioned you had to put lubrication on those lead screws. Was it lead screws or surfaces?
On the lead screw, the thing the Z-axis is connected to, behind that, it has those linear bearings.
So you have any sawdust issues with those?
No, I haven't had any yet. But that is a wear issue, and they actually sell replacement bearings, just for that problem. But yeah, and I don't have the dust boot and stuff on there, and so I have a lot of problems with dust in general, especially if I use that flattening bit. And then, and I can tell by this that there's little cuppings, so I can tell that even though it was level and flat, that there's something going on.
Is that
Out of
maple?
tram.
No, I don't know what it is. Is it spalted maple?
I think it might be a silver maple that's spalted. Yeah.
Okay.
What do you use? Mach 3, Mach 4?
Mach 4.
Mach 4.
Yeah.
Can you tile with your stair? Where like mine's 2x3,
Yeah.
and I can go 2x6.
Oh, okay.
But I've never done it, I don't know how to do it yet, but there's a way where you can just keep running it through
Oh, okay.
lengthwise, so you can do a lot longer, you just can't do it.
Yeah, I did an
Yeah.
11-foot,
Yeah.
an 11-foot sign on a 2x2.
Oh, did you?
Yes,
Okay.
just
Yeah, don't tell my wife that.
Well, what's it worth?
$1,500.
Yeah.
moved it 6 times.
Okay, so do you just drill down in, with an end mill and make an index point, or?
No, you don't need, just have an index point on your bed
Okay,
and match that.
as you just
as you move it,
Okay.
yes.
Cool. Any other questions? Hey,
Wanna go? Okay. I made what I call a coffee table, because that's how we use it. It kind of happened, you might say, accidentally. For Christmas, I wanted to whip out some cutting boards for people, not too fancy, but this piece of wood came from the log I had Ralph cut up back in, I think it was 2013. At any rate, it's the only time I ever said, I just want you to flitch cut, so they just go through the whole thing and leave it all live edge. And most of it's been staying around since then. But, so this piece, I guess, yeah, this piece here was 8 foot tall. And I cut cutting boards out of that. People like the live edge, charcuterie boards, whatever you call them. So it was easy to do. And then I had this piece left, and I thought, huh, I wonder. And so I thought about it for a few days, and I decided I'd make it a table out of it. But usually I have stretchers like on a Windsor chair or something, but I wanted something different this time. So I came up with the idea that I'd steam bend these one-bys, the walnut one-bys, and intersect them into the legs. And it took a fair amount of figuring to learn or to figure out how to do that. But it all came out pretty good. I was real happy with it. I haven't steam bent a lot of walnut before, but that went without a hitch. We had to make forms for it. There was a lot of hours in it, but real happy with the piece. Wife loves it. And cherry legs, walnut stretchers, and walnut top. So that's it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so when you steam bend them, did you cut them into thin pieces and laminate them?
No, it's not laminated. No.
Oh, that's
wow.
all one?
Yeah,
You
one-
bent it all at once?
Yeah.
What's your joint on the crisscross?
Those are half laps. Yeah. Mhm. Yep. And probably one of the harder ones was drilling these through and not blowing out when you come out the outside. And I was pretty successful at that with brad point bits. You know, it's got to go through slow.
Is the geometry the same on both curves?
No, it's not. It's asymmetrical, and
So how do you lay that out?
well, I'll try to explain how I came about it. I got the legs turned and put them in, and then stood the table up without the stretchers, of course, because they weren't made. But and then I took two pieces of 1/4 by inch wood, and I went from the inside there to the inside of that one, got them cut the right length, and I clamped them where they crossed and touched everywhere. And so then I took that and I set it on a piece of paper, and that gave me these points for the intersection. And then I just started messing with curves that I thought looked good, and I came up with that. And then once I got it steam bent, you don't know if your bends are gonna come out the same as the lines on your paper. So, but you can make that, but then I had to, it turned out that these didn't spring back very much at all, so that worked out good. But I had to go through kind of the process again just to make sure that what I had to work with was gonna still work. And then hand carved all this, and even the tenants, that was kind of a curious thing. I knew I could get close, hand carving with a knife, but you really want them to be spot on. So I was like, well, once I get close, what could I ram over them to be the right size? Because that was a 5/8 hole that I was going to drill. Well, I had a piece of 1/2 inch black iron pipe that when you cut it, it kind of shrinks it a little bit, almost puts a knife edge on it. And so I thought, well, maybe that's about the right size. And it turned out to be absolutely perfect for the 5/8 hole I was drilling. So once I got it close, then I'd drive that 1/2 inch pipe over it and then do all the rest just with a knife. But yeah, it was an interesting project. And actually, I mean, from the get-go, I thought I'd like for the tenants to come through, and but I also thought that's probably not gonna happen, but as I went along, everything that I originally kind of was thinking about ended up working out, so, yeah.
Did you have to put your base all together and then fit the top to that to get those tenons all through there?
How did I do that? It wasn't near as hard as I thought it was gonna be.
It looks hard.
Well, the hard part was you can get them in there when it's not together, but everything tilted the right way. So the way I did is I put the legs in, but they weren't glued, but they were set in place as deep as they go. And then I was able to take one at a time. I can't quite remember, but it allowed me to get it to where they were slip fit, so it wasn't like I had to beat them together. I actually was able to dry assemble the whole thing. And once I had it dry assembled, I was able to take one leg out at a time and glue it up, which put it right where it needed to be. And then wedged all these, and then once I had them all them done, then I took it out of the tabletop, which was easy enough to do, and glued and put it back together and wedged everything. So, yeah, that turned out to be one of the easier glue-ups that I've had to do as far as a lot of joints at once.
So when you glued it up, the legs stuck through a little extra?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Trim it off?
Yeah, about that
Sand-
far.
Finish sand
You
together?
have them up higher so that you can wedge them and you get that
Yeah.
leverage. So and that was the other thing. I'm working with walnut and cherry, and typically I'll do my wedges on tops like this out of a contrasting wood. Well, I just got confused when I was cutting wedges, and I cut cherry ones for cherry legs, so you can barely see the damn thing.
What's your finish?
It's just urethane, yeah, satin polyurethane. Well, the bottoms, it's satin too, but that was a different kind of. It's too shiny for me. But then on the top, I used Minwax, which always gives me a nice sheen that I like. But by that point, I was done. I wasn't going to put another coat on anything. So the legs are a little shinier, even though that's supposed to be a satin as well. But, yeah.
Looks nice.
Thank you. Yeah, it was quite a project. I really enjoyed it. And works
Do
well.
you have a step at the top of those legs to register to the bottom, or is it just simply the?
No, well, it's just, when I turn these on the lathe, I put a line in them with a skew chisel.
Okay.
And they're turned to a specific, diameter. And then when I'm reaming out the mortises, I make sure you don't go too far, and so it's as far as they'll go.
Okay.
Yeah, so they get wedged in there, kind of like a Morse taper on a lathe. You know, you just stick it in there, it holds like grim death, but then glue it and wedge it, and it should never come apart. So, yeah.
How many hours do you think that is, Mike?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. It seemed like,
80?
I mean, I hope not. But, you know, just like for the stretchers, I had to make the forms for that too, get them all sawn and sanded, and then the hardware that I needed to be able to hold those pieces once I got them bent. So maybe, you know.
You could do another one in half the time, probably.
Well, yeah, it'll only take me
Second one.
only take me a week.
Yeah, 40 hours.
The thing is, being asymmetrical, you know, you wouldn't be.
They would all be different.
Everything would be kind of different. I've thought about
Yeah,
how I
you
might.
can't match the,
Yeah, because if I did something similar, I'd hope to be able to reuse those forms, because, you know, you end up with just forms everywhere.
yeah.
Probably just throw them in a burn pile at this point. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Nice piece.
Thank you.
Very nice.
When you've been married to the same woman for 35 years, Valentine's Day can be a little stressful when you want to think of something to do differently for them to kind of spice things up. And so I thought I would make for my wife a jewelry box and to kind of spice things up. And what I did is I actually used the shape of origin to cut the joints right here, the box joints right there, and then to add the inlay, I put in Purple Heart. I cut that out with a shaper, and it was pretty much dead on with it then. So I used walnut for the sides, and then the top is maple. And then on the inside, what I did was I actually put in purple flocking. That's one of her favorite colors. And when you use flocking, you have to use the same color adhesive with it. And there's like probably 20 different colors you can get. So if you go with black, you have to use the black adhesive with it. And it's fairly easy to put that in. It's a lot easier than trying to put in glue in fleece, if you will, with it. It takes 9 hours for it to dry, but it's fairly simple. You do though need to put in painter's tape along the edges so it doesn't get the adhesive on it, but it leaves a pretty sharp, I think a pretty sharp cut on it, if you will. And then I used for the hinges, the Brusso hinges. I've had good luck with those. I've been very happy with those, with it. And then I put what's that?
What was the name of the hinges?
Brusso, B-R-U-S-S-O. Yeah, and they're salvo brass. Yeah, and then I used Babinga to kind of highlight it with it. And so it was a fairly easy project to do. And she was very happy with it. So that's the important thing. You know, you want to make your wife happy for Valentine's.
She didn't say, how come there's no jewelry in it?
You know, I've heard now for probably 10 years, I don't want any flowers at all. You know, you guys have probably heard that. I learned the hard way, bringing flowers. This time what I did was I put on the inside packets of seeds for flowers. I got that covered. So, and a gift card to appearances with it though, so. Okay.
I didn't have to do anything with Valentine's Day because my wife gave me COVID.
She owes you then.
That's right.
Yeah.
What kind of wood's the top?
The top is maple. And she actually has seen me, I've been retired now a little over a year. I actually have an agreement with a local jeweler whenever he wants. I actually build jewelry boxes for him like this and ring boxes. And she's seen those go out of the house all the time, and I can tell she liked them. And so I figured I better do something like this a little different, you know, kind of change things up with it then. She was happy with it then. So that's the important thing.
Where did you find hard maple that dark?
This maple, there is, the guy I get my wood from is, he's in Noble, Illinois. There's a lumber mill down there. And I bought a supply of maple from him like a year ago.
Have you met Ralph?
Yes, I have. I was out there 2 weeks ago buying some red oak from him, so, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Looks like we only got about 10 minutes left. Yes.
I have a question. Is there any chance we can just forget about how cheap we can get one of these screens and get the new one right now?
That is the new one.
The screens.
The screen for the projection screen, because it's really hard to see this. And
Oh, yeah, we need a new projector.
new projector,
Yeah.
whatever it is that we need.
The,
I know we were waiting for them to come down in price, but hey, you know, with gasoline doing what it's doing, I'm all for getting a new projector right now.
let me, look how much they're gonna cost, and then we can vote on increasing that at our next
Okay.
meeting, so.
Thanks.
Can you give me 5 minutes so I don't have to look that stuff back?
Yes, yeah. Give me 1 second, I got a question.
I just want to make an announcement for Ralph there. My wife and I drove home from Cincinnati yesterday, and we crossed over the Ohio-Indiana state line on Interstate 74. We drove right past the Wood-Mizer facility there in Indiana. I didn't know it was coming up, otherwise I would have taken a picture of it, because it had a big sign, Wood-Mizer.
They're a big corporation.
And it was a huge building with all sorts of parking spaces out there. It must have had a couple of hundred guys working in there. And I don't know how big those biggest wood mills are, but they had enough acreage under roof to really make a whole bunch of stuff. And all I did was just drive by it. I didn't get a chance
You didn't see mine out there, did you?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't see yours. So I thought you'd appreciate it.
Got one coming?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Mine's not as fancy as his.
no, this is a old thing.
Yeah, I'd get ancient. I'd sell
An acquaintance tore out some old hedge posts. This is Osage orange. A lot of these mallets were made from that Osage orange. Can you guys keep that paper moving?
Chop, chop.
The sheets that are coming around are just some shapes that I Googled off the internet. Some of them are round. They don't have to be two-piece if you want to waste this much good wood. Some of them are this shape, but almost nobody wants a square end on them. These ends are best cut at about 3 degrees. And the idea is wherever your hand is, you want your hand to basically be hitting the table the same angle as the angle of the head. Most of them that are that shape have either a flat top or a slightly rounded top. And the reason for that is that this looks just plain ugly. There's no balance to it. It should be the other way around. But you kind of have to live with what you're working with. This is, I think, some kind of SPF wood. I just happen to have a chunk that size. I like this kind of handle. If it's parallel, you put grooves in it so it stays with your hand. This one is, a lot of them are flatter this way than they are this way, but a lot of them have a curve here and a curve here, and that keeps the butt a little bit bigger so it doesn't slip out of your hand. Most of these are finished with boiled linseed oil. And I had rarely used it before, but I really like it. Here is yet another version of a handle. Some kind of cheap wood, and I decided to stain this one. But I turned it on the lathe to put these little grooves in. And your grooves your fingers kind of fit in the grooves, and you can either go all the way out, or you can choke it up and still have grip with the grooves. Another one with a stained handle, darker stain. A mistake, flat, parallel, 90 degrees. The whole handle is a taper. I won't even pass this around. I'm probably going to cut this at another degree or two at an angle, and this is the one I'm going to use in my shop because I have a screw eye here to hang it up. This is perhaps my favorite. I chose to make a parallel rectangular hole through there by having 3 boards here. And over here, I split V-shaped wedges, and I used a red heart as the wedges. And I really like this handle too. It's rather skinny here and got a nice feel on this end. These two are solid cherry. Cherry is probably too soft to be beaten on anything metal. The Osage orange will probably handle most anything. Oh, it'll dent a little bit, but not much. But this cherry with the grain running this way instead of this way, one of these is finished with a new product I decided to try called Odie's Oil, O-D-I-E. And it's kind of a secret recipe, but I really, really like it. Eat whichever one of these is. It only took like a half a teaspoon to do the whole thing, and I was quite liberal with it. But it's a type that soaks in and soaks in. But boiled linseed oil does that too. It just takes a longer period to dry. You leave boiled linseed on as long as you want to, and then you wipe off the excess. I honestly forgot what I put on this one. But if anybody wants to buy one of these, give me an offer.
All right, just to finish things out, a reminder, Friday at the hotel with Mark Adams, Friday evening, Saturday all day at Sangamon Reclaim. And then next month, April, we'll have the Tight Bond representative, yes.
Google Maps has our address right, Apple Maps does not. 2130 East Clear Lake Avenue.
2130 East Clear Lake Avenue, it's also in the email that I sent out to everybody. So if you have an Apple phone or you're using Apple Maps, it's gonna take you to the wrong place. So make sure you get that address. So, one last thing.
You sent the right address?
Correct, yep. And then, Steve, if you'd like to draw a ticket out of there.
For Curtis's question, so far we've got 35 people that have re-upped their membership. Okay, I'll pick it. You want to pick one?
Who hasn't? Let's call them out right now.
Ben Reynolds.
Ben Reynolds, pay it. All right.
Not me.
Last three, 471. I like that.
Just a little too late.
How did that happen?
All right.
There you go.
Hey, I've got that too.
All right. Thank you all for coming out. Hope to see you this weekend and next month. If I was looking on their website, it looks like their hours are back to 8 o'clock here. So if you want to hang around for a little bit and socialize before rushing out of here, that should be okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody want that log section? Makes a good stool. Ralph? Use a fence post for a handle. Be good for driving tent stakes.
Should have brought a wedge. We could have